Hello, my name is Vincent Gascon. I'm a PhD student in psychology at the Pontificia Universidad Javeriana in Colombia. It all starts in the clearing of things. Is that clear enough? Today's presentation is about how my doctoral research question could be revealed in part through an argumentative text in favor of culture as a central axis for understanding society and otherness. We will talk about the text of a Canadian professor, Anthony Sampson, Functions and Meanings of Culture, that was published 25 years ago, and the research question from my doctoral thesis. The title of my thesis, as of today, probably the 7th version, is Borderlandia and Suprajectivity, the diplomatic self in perpetual fluid mobility and the ontological becoming of ambassador. Subtitle, Exploring the Diplomatic Condition, the Clearing Between Movement, Identity, and Existential State of Representation. From this positioning and auto-ethnographic reflections, a research question arose. In the clearing that unfolds between two states, how might the ambassador's transient mobility, mandated by duty, cultivate a suprajective subject that transcends subjectivity? This came out of reflecting on my many years of experiences abroad, suggesting that repeated mobility are shaped in forms of tensions where the ambassador's formal identity dissolves in the face of raw need. Heidegger's Linktung, the clearing, emerges in all things shaped by time and space, in bomb shelters, in border crossing or consular waiting areas, reveal deeper realities about self and otherness. Here and there, a country's envoy celebrates under singular discourse, momentary gestures of empathy, offering water, broken phrase of comfort, dismantle official mask, forging ephemeral but potent micro-communities of trust. That being said, if culture, as suggested by Sampson in his text in 2000, serves us both as a structuring framework and a protective mechanism against existential perplexity and dreadfulness, how does the ambassador's suprajective self navigate and reshape these cultural boundaries in moments of tensions? Culture, in this view, provides a stable, interpretive framework regulating human interactions and offering a psychological buffer against the void. Yet, in ambassadorship service, as I observed through my years of serving as Canadian diplomat abroad, serving 15 ambassadors as their aide over almost 20 years period, this very structure is often tested, reshaped, or momentarily dissolved. Sampson argues in Functions y Sentidos de la Cultura that cultural norms serves both to integrate and exclude, forming boundaries that defined identity. The ambassador, as a mediator between distinct cultural and political spaces, enacts a semiotic role, shifting between these structured identities while adapting to crisis context. Sampson highlights how culture is formidable apparatus. Toda cultura es así un formidable aparato interpretativo que cumple la función de proporcionar significaciones. This insight is crucial in the exploration of the ambassador's daily life, as the thesis aimed to develop. The ambassador, as the top envoy of his country's representative, operates at the intersection of multiple cultural grids, tasked with translating and reinterpreting meaning across shifting geopolitical landscape. The ambassador, as a custodian of international dialogue, navigates an intricate web of semiotic codes ensuring that meaning remains coherent while adapting to new context. Hence, the core investigative question of my thesis is how mobility predicates the ambassador's functions and meanings in his daily life. In this sense, the ambassador embodies the suprajective identity, a concept that explains the perpetual movement between interpretation and reinterpretation, constructing fluid yet stable narratives of belonging in the interstices of global diplomacy. This aligns with Bourdieu's concept of habitus, where the ambassador's repeated mobility shapes an embodied disposition that influence their navigation of shifting cultural landscapes. Unlike static cultural identities, the suprajective ambassador develops a reflexive habitus, one that is neither entirely structured nor completely fluid, but dynamically oscillating between institutional representation and personal adaptation. A new praxis emerges, one that simultaneously imposes coherence upon social structures while restricting the fluidity of identity formation. Later in the thesis, thanks to Sampson's reflections, we can ask ourselves whether the ambassador is or not fully absorbed by the state he represents. This is in part how suprajective subject takes birth. As Sanson elaborates, cultural frameworks act as interpretive grids that mediate belonging and exclusion, shaping how individuals perceive themselves with broader socio-symbolic orders. Furthermore, Sanson emphasizes that culture operates as a system of meaning that is both necessary and limiting, reinforcing a collective identity that paradoxically remains contingent on its distinction from the other. The ambassador, constantly crossing these borders, a theme I call Borderlandia, in previous essays, embodies a paradoxical position, both a representative of national identity and a suprajective figure who must dissolve and reconstruct cultural meaning in each new assignment. Thus, the suprajective ambassador, moving through multiple cultural spaces, may inhabit or even uphold a liminal space, a concept originally theorized by anthropologist Arnold van Gennep in Les Rites de Passage, and expanded upon by Victor Turner, where these structures become more fluid, shaping an emergent identity attuned to transient yet deeply significant ethical encounters. As my experiences are piling over almost 2 decades of being in the arena across continents and conflict zones, these lives experience stitch a transnational sense of belonging that surpasses old cultural boundaries. The resulting identity is neither purely national nor fully universal. It is suprajective, a state that integrates the partial vantage points from each mission into a cohesive moral stance. Though never total, this stance acknowledges the borderland realms, where illusions of a single home or stable subjectivity fade, replaced by acceptance of perpetual fluidity, ephemeral ethics, and unstoppable empathy. Thus, a heading investigative question emerges. Does the suprajective self subvert or reinforce cultural structures? Does it become an unmatured agent of cultural identity, continuously adapting to new realities, or does it merely operate within an extended field of cultural codes, still bounded by their underlying logic? Sanson's discussion of culture as a semiotic system that defines the boundaries between us and them suggests that even the suprajective ambassador cannot fully escape cultural frameworks. Yet, in moments of crisis or tension, these boundaries blur, allowing for new forms of engagement where identity is shaped less by nationality and more by transient ethical encounters. Moreover, I expand upon Other Sampson's works to further understand his stance on culture and matters of humanities. In Ética, Moral y Psicoanálisis, he explores the ethical dimension of subjectivity, suggesting that the suprajective ambassador, project, might embody an ethical conversion, an ongoing negotiation between duty and desire, between institutional constraint and existential authenticity. This ethical transformation is not without violence. As he notes in Reflexiones sobre la violencia, la guerra y la paz, violence, whether institutional or personal, is an inescapable feature of human societies. The ambassador, as a mediator within zones of conflict, must navigate this violence, sometimes absorbing it into their own fragmented identity. Hence, the question arises, should the ambassador separate himself from his opus, or is he inevitably taken by the state he represents? In closing, I recognize that suprajectivity is more than an abstract concept. I'm also very cognizant it is new to the academic realm. Sanson's text on funciones y sentidos de la cultura, the text we saw, serves us as a foundational lens to understand how the lived outcome of repeated crossings into tension is marked by iterative encounters with the void and the praxis of subverting death. It arises from a mosaic of diaries, each penned under different skies. In them, I see the vestige of my old self, a singular official bound by illusions of control, gradually yielding to a being who stands in the in-between, the paradigm of mobility that once anchored by past experience, yet open to new ephemeral identities. This is the diplomatic self, in perpetual motion, the clearing between movement, identity, and the existential state of representation, where, in each fragile moment, we co-author new possibilities. Sanson articulates, la cultura impone fronteras no solo físicas, sino simbólicas, y es en su transgresión donde surgen nuevas significaciones. This underscores the ambassador's continuous negotiation between state identity and suprajective existence, a theme that this thesis further explore. And it all starts in the Lichtung, the clearing. Is that clear enough? Thank you.